In the opening scene, we see Greg at work, making drawings of a beautiful woman and a big house while ignoring his work calls. He then gets a phone call from his daughter, Emily, who invites him to her graduation. After the call ended, he's then requested to go to his boss' office. Trying to avoid the meeting, he takes as much time as possible to delay the meeting. His boss' secretary calls him numerous times, and he finally leaves. During that time, his wallet is on his desk, which glitches momentarily. His boss Bjorn accuses him of being unfocused at work and that he's fired. Stunned by the news, Greg zones out for a few seconds, and as his boss tries to comfort him closely, he abruptly gets up and accidentally pushes Bjorn, causing him to fall back and hit the edge of the desk. Greg's shocked by what has happened and tries to check his pulse, but doesn't feel anything. Nervous, he tries to find a way to escape but couldn't find one. In a desperate attempt to not get blamed, he hides his boss on the window by hanging his sleeves and covering his body with the curtains. Greg then leaves the office and quickly heads down to a bar across the street, where he orders a drink. He sees a woman curiously looking at him. The woman makes gestures with her hands a few times, flickering the lights. When she notices he isn't affected by it, she utters that he is real. Confused, he asks what she is talking about. She comes over to him and demonstrates by telekinetically dropping the busboy's tray. Greg is baffled. Then the woman introduces herself as Isabel and invites him to her booth. Greg disagrees, then she whispers about him needing an alibi. Worried, he immediately goes to her. She points at Bjorn's body, hanging from the window visible from where they're sitting, and offers to help him. Isabel claims she's responsible for his situation because she is the reason this world exists. She promises to fix his problem if he does a favor for her. She asks him to get an amulet necklace from her ex-boyfriend, Kendo, who is in the bathroom, and explains to him that because he's real like herself and Greg, she couldn't use her powers on him, and further clarifies that most of what he is seeing or the people around him weren't real like them. He then asks about the necklace, and she tells him it contains special yellow crystals used to control the fake world he is in right now. He gets up to get the necklace, and Kendo lying on the ground unconscious, and therefore takes the necklace off his hand easily and returns it to Isabel. As she promised, she takes his hand, closes her eyes, and suddenly the sun starts to shine brighter from the outside. Isabel tells him the world is just light bouncing around his neurons and that he can manipulate it. Greg then closes his eyes, and in the office, Bjorn's body starts to slide down the window, accidentally opening it, causing him to fall down the building and die. Greg hurriedly runs to the scene, with his co-workers witnessing the event, believing that Bjorn has committed suicide. Isabel then grabs his hand and takes him away. Greg realizes he forgot his wallet at his office, wanting to go back and get it. Isabel insists not to, as it might make him suspicious to the police. Greg watches the news from a store, and the police haven't ruled out foul play yet. Isabel then suggests he should lay low until the case closes and takes him to a hideout under a bridge. Greg wants to go home, but realizes he is without his money, keys or ID, which is in his wallet back at this office. Having no other choices, he agrees to stay with Isabel. Later that day, the news reports that the police have ruled out foul play for Bjorn's sudden death and the case is closed. Excited, he wants to leave but decides to stay for dinner in appreciation of her help. Greg sobs over the death of his boss, but Isabel once again insists that Bjorn wasn't real. She gives him a lighter and dares him to light the candles far across from him. When he does light them, she again tells him to do it without the lighter, and he succeeds again. Greg is surprised with the abilities he has. During dinner, Isabel uncovers a drawing of the woman. She believes the sketches are the real lives outside of the fake world. Greg is doubtful, but Isabel assures him and asks to kiss her, and so he does. The next day, Emily, worried about her father, goes over to her brother, Arthur, to help her get their father to attend her graduation. Arthur, like his mother, doesn't want him around. Greg and Isabel spend the day together in a roller rink, and while in there, Isabel shares the yellow crystal with him, and using their powers, with Isabel's influence, Greg starts causing chaos at the rink. As they leave, they steal coats and hats. They then witness two people getting arrested by the police, and when they pass by them, Greg sees himself in the car, and suddenly, he finds himself in the police car while the couple were standing on the side of the road looking at them where they had stood. Shortly after, they get processed in the station, but eventually get released. Isabel is hungry, so they decide to go to a fast food restaurant, but tells him to order. She then goes to a car pulled up talking to prostitutes. While ordering the food, Greg notices he is short on cash and can't afford to buy the food, and as he looks over to Isabel, he sees her get in the car and leave. Surprised, he just leaves the restaurant and sits in the corner. After a while, the cashier comes out with a cold food and gets it to him. Then Isabel shows up. Without asking her anything, he simply shares the food with her. At night, Isabel leaves him stranded again, but asks him to wait for her. She goes into an apartment where her kendo lives and asks for more of the yellow crystals. While Greg is waiting, Emily finds him, asks him to come with her, but he tells her to wait because he is waiting for a friend. He remembers her graduation and promises to be there, but she lets him know it has already been 2 weeks since she graduated. Not wanting to push him, she just writes her phone number on the back of her graduation photo and tells him to call her when he is ready. Isabel comes back with the crystals and tells him to forget about Emily as she is not real, but Greg feels bad and feels he should go back to his old life. He wakes up the next morning in Isabel's tent, looks for her but doesn't see her anywhere near. Then he collects his drawings and goes to a payphone to leave a message to Emily. Isabel is back to her tent and nervously smoking, thinking Greg had left her. But then he comes back and she scolds him while crying, saying that she left a note for him. She learns that someone had taken the crystals while they were away. She sees a picture of his daughter in his pocket and asks him if he saw her, tells him that he is getting sucked into the illusion and dragging her with him. Tired, Greg suggests maybe they should stop seeing each other, that the only person telling him what is real or not is her, and he couldn't take it anymore. To further prove to him, Isabel takes out a box with blue crystals that are rare and would eject them from the fake world. She says they need to take 10 crystals each, but they are short by 4. Eager to prove, she decides to take the risk and they each take 8. And suddenly Greg wakes up in a lab with a tube in his nose, connecting him to a machine called the brain box. Isabel takes off the tube and tells the personnel calling her Dr. Clemens that Greg got too attached to the fake world, and they had to come back. The personnel detach the tube from Greg and calls him Dr. Whittle. They then go out to the outside and Greg is stunned to see the place being perfect, and the people around are clean and well-dressed, and some look ghostly, to which Isabel explains that it's a system called telepresence. She shows him a view of sites like the ones on his drawings, which all the more convinces him. While Greg is enjoying his perfect life with Isabel, Emily is looking for him in the other world. Isabel is worried that he might not remember this place because of the dosage of the blue pills they had taken, but Greg assures her it's okay, he doesn't remember, that he wants to discover everything in this world as a newborn. Greg asks if this world was always perfect, and Isabel recounts it was previously ridden with pollution and poverty, but it all changed with the discovery of automation, synthetic biology, and asteroid mining. In hopes of bringing his memory, she brings out a device he himself invented called the Thought Visualizer. It basically shows an animated visual image of even your wildest thoughts said out loud. Isabel goes on to explain how synthetic biology fixed their environment, while asteroid mining got them their wealth, and soon created automated robots to do their daily tasks for them so that they can do whatever they are passionate about. And when the people got used to their amazing lifestyle, Isabel wanted them to appreciate what could have been on the other side. And that is why she created the simulation. Greg is delighted. But Isabel insists they go back and fix the simulation, but he eventually convinces her they stay one more day. The next day, they attend a soiree where scientists and artists come together to celebrate. At the party, they are approached by Dr. Nye, who compliments Greg for his thought visualizer invention. Later in the evening, Dr. Nye approaches Greg again when he is alone and raises concerns of Isabel's project, and warns Greg she could lose her good name. Shortly after, Isabel comes over and asks him what Dr. Nye said. Guessing from his expression, she starts doubting herself, but Greg assures her that he believes in her. While they are leaving the party, Emily looks down from a balcony at Greg in telepresence form, where a police officer tells her not to react. The next morning, Greg tells Isabel to publish the project upon her asking to go back and finish it, and Greg insists she has enough data and would be interviewed in front of an audience at the presentation. At the presentation, Isabel describes bliss as a state of mind and can only be achieved through the experience of despair. She explains to the audience that Greg had been asked a series of questions before he went into the brain box and will ask the same questions now. She proceeds with the questions, like how he feels, if there is any complaint, and if there is something or someone he is lacking, and the answers are all in contrast to the Greg who answered before entering the brain box. So the presentation is a success. She is congratulated and praised by everyone, and as she searches for Greg, He is lured out by Emily, who appears again. He follows her up the stairs, and as they start talking, everything around them starts to merge with the simulation. Emily stresses he is not thinking clearly, and also reveals her taking the yellow crystals and hands them back to him. And slowly the merging grows and protesters appear at the party. And as Emily tells him to choose between the worlds, he hears Isabel calling him. But when he turns back, Emily is gone. As he then searches for Isabel, he spots her in the middle of a crowd. He takes a yellow crystal to telekinetically break the crowd apart. He takes her outside, where they see everything turning to the simulation. Isabel understands that taking fewer blue crystals causes this, and they quickly get back to the brain box to return to the simulation and get the right amount of blue crystals. They wake up in the tent hideout and quickly look for a kendo to hit the crystals. They steal a car to kendo, and in it is a gun. Isabel pulls out the gun and threatens him to give her the blue crystals. And when he reaches in his pockets to get it, she shoots and kills him, thinking he was taking out a gun. The police break into the building and start chasing them. The couple rush to the roof, where they climb down the fire escape. Meanwhile, Emily begs her brother to help her, as their dad was seen around at his old office. Greg and Isabel race back to their hideout, where the device is to eject them out of the simulation, but unfortunately, they still don't have enough crystals. The police locate them and order them to come out, and they realize only one can make it out. Emily gets there and shouts out to Greg, then the police take her away. Ultimately, Greg decides to stay and tells her to take the crystals herself. They share one last kiss, and she creates a distraction for Greg to escape by pretending to surrender. She uses the device and ejects herself out of the simulation. Greg runs away, and after he steers clear of the police, he then goes to a rehab center and talks about believing Emily is his daughter in his support group. And the movie ends when Greg meets Emily sometime later, looking better, as they happily hug.